Imagine being a 17-year-old girl falling from over 10,000 feet through the air after your commercial airplane breaks apart in a thunderstorm. Now imagine surviving that fall, only to find yourself completely alone in the most dangerous rainforest on Earth, with no supplies, no shelter, and no hope of immediate rescue. This is exactly what happened to Juliane Koepcke on Christmas Eve 1971, when Lanza Flight 508 was struck by lightning over the Peruvian Amazon rainforest. What followed was 11 days of survival that would test every limit of human endurance and prove that sometimes knowledge and determination can overcome even the most impossible circumstances. The methods Juliane used to stay alive, the horrifying discoveries she made in the jungle, and the incredible journey that led to her rescue will leave you amazed at what the human spirit can accomplish when faced with certain death. Juliane Koepcke was not an ordinary teenager. Born in Lima, Peru, in 1954 to German zoologist parents Hans Wilhelm and Maria Koepcke, she had grown up in one of the most unique environments imaginable. Her parents were renowned scientists who had dedicated their lives to studying the biodiversity of the Peruvian Amazon rainforest, and they had established a research station called Panguana in the heart of the jungle, about 150 miles from the city of Pucallpa. From a very young age, Juliane had been immersed in the natural world in ways that most children never experience. While other teenagers were concerned with typical adolescent interests, Juliane was learning to identify dangerous and safe plants, understanding animal behavior patterns, and absorbing crucial survival knowledge that her parents shared with her during their scientific expeditions. She could recognize the sounds of different bird species, knew which insects posed threats, and understood basic principles of jungle navigation. Her mother, Maria, was particularly influential in teaching Juliane about rainforest survival. Maria had spent years studying birds in the Amazon and had developed an intimate knowledge of jungle ecology that she passed on to her daughter. These lessons included practical survival skills, how to find water in the rainforest, which plants were safe to eat, how to avoid dangerous animals, and most importantly, how to follow water sources to find human settlements. By 1971, 17-year-old Juliane was completing her final year of high school at a German school in Lima. She was an excellent student with plans to follow in her parents' footsteps by studying biology. Her life was a unique blend of urban sophistication and jungle wisdom. She was equally comfortable in Lima's modern classrooms and in the primitive conditions of her parents' Amazon research station. The family had a tradition of spending holidays together at Panguana, their jungle research station. It was a place where they could work together on scientific projects, enjoy the incredible biodiversity of the rainforest, and strengthen their family bonds away from the distractions of city life. Christmas 1971 was planned to be no different, with Juliane and her mother scheduled to fly from Lima to Pucallpa, where Hans Wilhelm would meet them for their holiday celebration. On December 23, 1971, Juliane and Maria boarded Lanza Flight 508, a Lockheed L-188A Electra operated by Linneus Aéreas Nacionales S.A. The flight was scheduled to be routine, a short hop from Lima to Pucallpa that should have taken less than an hour. Juliane was looking forward to reuniting with her father and spending Christmas in the jungle environment she loved. She had no way of knowing that this routine flight would become one of the most extraordinary survival stories in aviation history. As the plane prepared for departure, Juliane settled into her window seat, probably reviewing her studies or thinking about the scientific projects she would work on with her parents during the holiday break. The knowledge that her parents had instilled in her about jungle survival was simply part of her education. She never imagined that these lessons would soon become the difference between life and death. Lanza Flight 508 departed Lima at 11:30 a.m. on December 24, 1971, carrying 92 passengers and crew members who were eager to reach their destinations for Christmas Eve celebrations. The weather forecast had indicated the possibility of thunderstorms along the route, But this was not unusual for flights over the Andes and the Amazon basin during the rainy season. The crew was experienced, and the aircraft was considered reliable for this type of regional service. Juliane was seated in row 19F, a window seat that gave her a clear view of the landscape below as the plane climbed toward its cruising altitude. Beside her sat her mother Maria, who was likely discussing their upcoming research plans or sharing observations about the terrain passing beneath them. The flight was supposed to be unremarkable, just another step in their journey to the family research station for the holidays. About 30 minutes into the flight, as the aircraft was flying over the dense Amazon rainforest at approximately 21,000 feet, the weather conditions began to deteriorate rapidly. The plane entered a severe thunderstorm system with intense turbulence, heavy rain, and dangerous electrical activity. Passengers began to feel increasingly uncomfortable as the aircraft was buffeted by powerful winds, and lightning illuminated the cabin through the windows. It was at 12:30 p.m., exactly 1 hour after departure, when disaster struck with terrifying suddenness. A massive lightning bolt hit the aircraft's right wing, causing an explosion that immediately disabled critical systems. The impact was so violent that it caused the wing to catch fire, and within seconds, the structural integrity of the entire aircraft was compromised. Juliane later described seeing a bright white light followed by the horrifying realization that the airplane was breaking apart around them. What happened next defies comprehension. The aircraft literally disintegrated in mid-air, with pieces of fuselage, wings, and debris scattered across miles of rainforest canopy. 91 passengers and crew members fell to their deaths. But somehow, miraculously, 17-year-old Juliane Koepcke survived the fall from over 10,000 feet while still strapped to her seat. The mechanics of her survival remain a subject of scientific fascination. Experts believe that several factors contributed to her miraculous survival. The dense rainforest canopy may have slowed her descent, acting like a natural cushion. She may have been in a part of the aircraft that maintained some aerodynamic stability during the fall, and her position in the seat may have protected her from the worst of the impact forces. Additionally, the heavy rain and thick jungle vegetation created conditions that, while still nearly fatal, were marginally more survivable than a fall onto solid ground. When Juliane regained consciousness the following morning, Christmas Day 1971, she found herself lying alone in the Amazon rainforest, surrounded by debris from the aircraft and experiencing pain from multiple injuries. Her right collarbone was broken. She had a deep gash on her leg. One eye was swollen shut, and she was concussed and disoriented. But she was alive, and as the magnitude of her situation became clear, she realized that her childhood education in jungle survival was about to be put to the ultimate test. What do you think about Juliane's incredible survival of this airplane disaster? How do you think you would have reacted waking up alone in the Amazon rainforest at 17 years old? Share your thoughts in the comments below. When Juliane fully regained consciousness on Christmas morning, the reality of her situation was almost too overwhelming to comprehend. She was completely alone in one of the most dangerous environments on Earth, the Peruvian Amazon rainforest, with no supplies, no communication equipment, and no clear idea of where she was or how far she might be from civilization. The dense jungle canopy above her blocked out most of the sunlight, creating a dim, humid world filled with unknown dangers and the constant sounds of insects, birds, and other creatures. Her physical condition was severe, but not immediately life-threatening. The broken collarbone was painful, but did not prevent her from moving. The deep cut on her leg was bleeding and would need attention to prevent infection, but it was not arterial. Her concussion caused disorientation and headaches, but her mental faculties were intact. Most importantly, she could walk, and she retained the jungle survival knowledge that her parents had taught her during her childhood. Juliane's first priority was to search for her mother, and any other possible survivors from the crash. She spent hours calling out and exploring the immediate area around where she had landed, hoping to find Maria or anyone else who might have survived the disaster. The search was heartbreaking and ultimately futile. She found pieces of the aircraft scattered throughout the jungle, personal belongings of other passengers, but no survivors. The realization that she was completely alone was psychologically devastating, but Juliane forced herself to focus on survival. Drawing on her parents' teachings, Juliane remembered one of the most important rules for jungle survival: follow water downstream, because water always leads to human settlements eventually. She began searching for a water source and eventually found a small stream. This discovery was crucial because it gave her both a source of drinking water and a navigation system that would guide her toward potential rescue. The jungle environment was hostile in ways that are difficult for most people to imagine. The humidity was oppressive, making every movement exhausting. The dense vegetation made travel extremely difficult, with thorny vines, fallen logs, and uneven terrain creating obstacles at every step. Insects were a constant torment: mosquitoes, flies, ants, and other biting creatures swarmed around her constantly, and she had no protection from their attacks. The sounds of the jungle were both fascinating and terrifying. Juliane could identify many of the bird calls and animal sounds because of her scientific upbringing, but she also heard unfamiliar noises that could represent dangerous predators. The Amazon is home to jaguars, anacondas, venomous snakes, caimans, and countless other creatures that could pose a threat to an injured teenager traveling alone. Food became an immediate concern, but Juliane's knowledge of jungle ecology helped her avoid potentially fatal mistakes. She knew that many jungle plants and fruits were toxic, and without being certain of identification, she avoided eating most vegetation. Instead, she focused on finding safe water sources and conserving her energy for travel. This decision probably saved her life, as many survival situations become fatal when people consume poisonous plants in desperation. The psychological challenges were as difficult as the physical ones. Juliane was dealing with grief over her mother's death, trauma from the airplane crash, pain from her injuries, and the overwhelming fear of being alone in a hostile environment. But she also drew strength from her scientific training, treating her situation as a problem to be solved methodically rather than a hopeless catastrophe. As night fell on her first day alone in the jungle, Juliane faced another challenge that would test her resolve. The Amazon rainforest at night is a completely different environment, filled with nocturnal predators, different sounds, and psychological terrors that daylight helps to suppress. She had to find shelter, protect herself from animals and insects, and somehow get enough rest to continue her journey the next day. Thank you so much for staying with us through this incredible and difficult journey so far. Juliane's story is about to reveal the shocking methods she used to stay alive in the world's most dangerous jungle, and the best is yet to come. What she had to do to survive will amaze you. By the third day of her ordeal, Juliane had established a routine that would sustain her through the most challenging survival experience imaginable. She would wake at dawn, assess her physical condition, drink water from the stream she was following, and begin the exhausting process of pushing through the dense jungle vegetation along the waterway. Her strategy of following the stream downstream was sound, but the reality of executing this plan was far more difficult than she had anticipated. The jungle was fighting her every step of the way. The vegetation was so thick in places that she had to crawl on her hands and knees to make progress. Thorny vines tore at her clothes and skin, adding new injuries to her existing wounds. The stream she was following meandered through the landscape, sometimes disappearing underground or spreading out into swampy areas that forced her to make difficult navigation decisions. Her food situation became desperate by the fourth day. Juliane had found a few pieces of candy from the wreckage of the airplane, but these were quickly consumed. The jungle offered potential food sources, but her scientific training made her cautious about eating unfamiliar plants or fruits. Instead, she was forced to resort to survival methods that would test her psychological limits as much as her physical endurance. One of the most shocking aspects of Juliane's survival was her willingness to eat insects and other small creatures that she could catch safely. Drawing on her knowledge of jungle ecology, she knew that many insects were actually nutritious and relatively safe to consume. She ate ants, small beetles, and larvae that she found in rotting logs, forcing herself to overcome natural revulsion in order to maintain her strength. This protein source, while disgusting, provided essential nutrients that helped keep her alive. The stream water itself became both her salvation and a source of additional challenges. While following the water downstream was her best strategy for finding civilization, drinking directly from jungle streams exposed her to parasites and waterborne diseases that would affect her health for years afterward. But dehydration would have killed her within days, so she had no choice but to accept these long-term health risks for immediate survival. Her injuries were becoming increasingly problematic as the days passed. The wound on her leg showed signs of infection, and without antibiotics or proper medical care, she was fighting a battle against sepsis as well as starvation and exhaustion. The broken collarbone made certain movements extremely painful, and her concussion symptoms persisted, causing disorientation and memory problems that made navigation more difficult. Perhaps most challenging of all was the constant threat of dangerous animals. The Amazon rainforest is home to some of the world's most lethal creatures, and Juliane encountered many of them during her 11-day journey. She saw venomous snakes, including fer-de-lance and bushmaster species that could kill with a single bite. She heard the sounds of jaguars and other large predators, and she had to constantly watch for caimans when crossing or following waterways. One of the most terrifying encounters occurred when Juliane discovered what appeared to be a partially decomposed human body floating in the stream she was following. The sight was horrifying, but her scientific training helped her overcome her emotional reaction and recognize that this was likely another victim of the airplane crash. This discovery was psychologically devastating, but also gave her hope that she was not the only person in this area. If other crash victims had made it this far, there might be rescue teams searching nearby. The psychological toll of prolonged isolation and constant fear cannot be overstated. Juliane began experiencing hallucinations and periods of disorientation where she wasn't sure if what she was seeing was real. She would hear aircraft engines that turned out to be insect sounds, see clearings that disappeared when she approached them, and sometimes felt like she was being followed by invisible presences in the jungle. But perhaps most remarkably, Juliane never completely lost hope. Her scientific upbringing had taught her to approach problems methodically, and she continued to believe that following the stream downstream would eventually lead her to human settlement. This faith in her strategy, combined with her knowledge of jungle survival, sustained her through moments when most people would have given up entirely. By the 10th day, Juliane's physical condition was deteriorating rapidly, but she had also begun to notice subtle changes in the environment that suggested she might be approaching inhabited areas. The stream was becoming wider and deeper. The jungle was showing signs of human impact, and she occasionally found evidence of human activity like cut branches or old campsites. On the morning of January 3, 1972, her 11th day alone in the Amazon rainforest, Juliane Koepcke made a discovery that would save her life. As she continued following the stream that had been her guide and lifeline, she spotted something that seemed almost too good to be true. A small boat pulled up on the bank of the waterway, along with clear signs of a human encampment nearby. The boat belonged to a group of Peruvian lumberjacks who were working in the area and had established a temporary camp along the stream. When Juliane first approached the camp, no one was present, but she could see evidence of recent human activity: tools, supplies, and most importantly, a shelter where she could rest and wait for the workers to return. After 11 days of constant uncertainty and fear, she had finally found the human contact that represented her salvation. The physical condition in which Juliane was discovered was shocking even to the experienced woodsman who found her. She had lost a significant amount of weight and was suffering from severe dehydration despite having access to stream water. Her injuries had become infected, and she was showing signs of blood poisoning from the various cuts and wounds she had sustained. Most disturbing were the maggot infestations that had developed in her wounds, a common occurrence in jungle survival situations, but horrifying to witness. When the lumberjacks Marcio Rivera, Aladino Rivera, and Heladio Rivera returned to their camp that evening, they could hardly believe what they were seeing. A teenage girl, barely recognizable as human after her ordeal, was sitting in their camp speaking to them in Spanish and explaining that she was the survivor of an airplane crash. Her story was so extraordinary that they initially had difficulty believing it. But her condition and the details she provided convinced them that she was telling the truth. The men immediately recognized that Juliane needed urgent medical attention, but they were working in an extremely remote area with no communication equipment and no easy way to transport her to medical facilities. They provided her with food, clean water, and basic first aid. But more importantly, they gave her the human contact and emotional support she desperately needed after nearly 2 weeks of complete isolation. The rescue operation that followed was a testament to the resourcefulness and compassion of people living in remote areas. The lumberjacks used their boat to transport Juliane downstream to a larger settlement where she could receive medical attention and contact authorities. The journey took several more hours, but compared to her 11-day ordeal in the jungle, it must have felt like a luxury cruise. When Juliane finally reached medical facilities in Pucallpa, the doctors who examined her were amazed that she had survived not just the airplane crash, but 11 days alone in the jungle with her injuries. Her case became a medical study in human endurance and survival psychology, providing valuable insights into the physical and mental adaptations that allow people to survive extreme situations. The reunion with her father was emotionally overwhelming for both of them. Hans Wilhelm Koepcke had spent the previous 11 days organizing search efforts and fearing the worst about both his wife and daughter. The news that Juliane had survived was miraculous, but the confirmation that Maria had died in the crash was devastating. The family had lost a beloved wife and mother, but they had also witnessed an extraordinary demonstration of human resilience and the value of scientific education. The international media attention that followed Juliane's rescue was intense and sometimes overwhelming. Her story became headline news around the world, and she was hailed as a miracle survivor whose experience challenged conventional understanding of what humans could endure. But Juliane herself was more interested in recovering from her ordeal and eventually completing her education than in becoming a celebrity. The long-term effects of her jungle survival experience were significant and lasting. She suffered from tropical diseases contracted from contaminated water, required extensive medical treatment for her injuries and infections, and dealt with psychological trauma that would affect her for years. But she also gained a unique perspective on human resilience and the importance of scientific knowledge in survival situations. Juliane Koepcke's 11-day survival in the Amazon rainforest represents one of the most extraordinary examples of human endurance and the practical value of scientific education ever documented. Her story demonstrates that knowledge, determination, and methodical thinking can overcome even the most impossible circumstances, and that sometimes the lessons we learn in childhood can literally mean the difference between life and death. The survival techniques that Juliane employed following water downstream, avoiding dangerous plants, finding safe protein sources, and maintaining hope despite overwhelming odds have been studied by survival experts and incorporated into wilderness survival training programs around the world. Her experience also led to improvements in aircraft safety systems and emergency survival equipment for flights over remote areas. Today, Juliane Koepcke has built a distinguished career as a biologist and continues the scientific work that her parents began in the Peruvian Amazon. She has returned to the site of her survival experience multiple times, both for scientific research and to come to terms with the trauma of her ordeal. Her story has been documented in books, films, and scientific papers, but she remains remarkably modest about her extraordinary experience. Perhaps most importantly, Juliane's story demonstrates the incredible resilience of the human spirit when faced with seemingly hopeless situations. Her ability to maintain rational thinking under extreme stress, to draw on her education and training when her life depended on it, and to never give up hope even in the darkest moments provides inspiration for people facing their own difficult challenges. What do you think about Juliane's incredible story of survival and determination? Could you have made the same difficult decision she made during those 11 days? What aspect of her survival impressed you the most? Her scientific knowledge, her physical endurance, or her mental strength? Have you ever found yourself in a situation where childhood lessons suddenly became crucially important? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one and are always fascinated by the different perspectives our viewers bring to these incredible stories. If this story of courage, science, and survival against impossible odds inspired you, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories that showcase the amazing capabilities of the human spirit. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest videos. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if Juliane's story moved you. And if you were amazed by Juliane Koepcke's survival in the Amazon rainforest, you won't want to miss our next recommended video about another incredible person who faced nature's deadliest challenges and refused to give up. Click on the video appearing on your screen now to continue exploring the extraordinary limits of human survival and determination.